I get in, sir? Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir. Good morning, sir.
Yes. Be comfortable. You studied electrical and electronics engineering, completed it in 2018. So that's about 4 or 5 years ago. Since then, what all have you been doing?
I've been preparing for civil services, sir, from 2018 and some other competitive exams as well.
Have you got employed anywhere? All the while self-financing or parents
My
financing?
parents have been kind enough to support me, sir.
Amruta Vishwa Vidya Peetham or Peetham.
So it has 3 branches, one in Coimbatore, the second branch is in Bangalore and third branch is in Kollam. So I did my graduation in Coimbatore branch, sir.
There for about 4 years.
Yes, sir.
You can speak Tamil?
I can understand and I can speak relatively good, sir. I can manage things. If I'm there in Tamil Nadu, I can manage things, but I'm not that fluent, sir.
So right now you are based in Hyderabad only? Yes, sir. And your father is still working?
No, sir. He's retired, sir.
Retired?
Yes, sir.
From State Bank?
Yes, sir.
In the rank of?
Chief manager, sir.
Something like a GM or what?
Scale 4, sir. Scale 4, chief manager. Yes, sir. It's less than AGM, sir.
Oh, less than
AGM. AGM, CGM and GM. AGM, DGM, the hierarchy is AGM, DGM, GM, sir.
Which was the last branch
So he worked in the local head office in Koti, in the financial inclusion department, sir.
Good. So, do you still remember what you studied in the engineering college?
Relatively good, sir. I'm not that well versed now, but I think I do remember some things.
There is a lot of talk about, number one, electrical vehicles. And they naturally have to use this lithium ion batteries. I am a layman. You explain to me how lithium ion batteries work. What exactly is the lithium? Is it the anode or the cathode? What is it?
So I don't remember whether lithium is anode or cathode, but lithium has a significant impact in the construction of batteries, sir, because it has high energy density. And lithium ion batteries, basically the rate of charging is a bit high as compared to other batteries. And lithium batteries, they work at optimal voltages. It makes sure that the working of the engine is not destabilized. At the same time, in lithium battery, the rate of discharge is also quite less, so it's durable, sir. So lithium is quite suited for the electrical vehicles battery.
Yeah. So, Mr. Pranav, your Mata Amrutanandamayi institution is considered to be different from other universities. But still, while charging fee from the students, I understand that it is on par with any other university like VIT. So, is there no conflict of objectives in that institution?
So I do agree the academic fees is on par with other universities, but the university being a trust-based organization, I think the funds that have been collected through academic fees have been used for certain welfare objectives. For example, during college, I've seen my friends participate in a campaign called Live in Labs, where students, they go to villages and they find their problems and devise certain smart solutions, and some other activities during certain humanitarian assistance during disasters. All these things, and like for example, during college I have been heading the Planning and Resources Tech Fest, during which I had to talk with many workers. So when I've talked to the workers, they have told that they have been benefited by many welfare programs being held by the trust, along with the employment that is given to them through proper shelter, food, and certain capacity building programs for the workers. I do think there has been, I don't think it's a conflict of interest, sir, but I think there has been proper use of funds.
Do you think it is necessary for them to construct 7-star type of accommodation for the students when on the other hand the Amma considers herself to be a spiritual leader and a hugging saint and all that. Don't you see a conflict there?
First, I'm not aware of an 7-star accommodation because I've been an hosteler in the college. So our rooms are not on par with 7-star or 5-star. They have been basic like any other hostels. So I'm not aware of any 7-star accommodation.
Any ashrams run by Amma? At least
There have been 2 ashrams in our college as well, sir. I've even engaged with many other persons in inmates of those ashrams, sir.
did you ever go to Mahendra Hills ashram of Amma? No. Okay, all right. Okay, now tell me, you studied mathematics. That's also your optional. Now, how do you become good at mathematics? Is it gene based or practice based? And secondly, why is that the British PM is insisting on maths to be studied by everyone up to some age?
So, firstly, I think to learn mathematics, there needs to be a proper combination of aptitude and attitude, sir. Aptitude is nothing but the zeal, at the same time the ability to understand and conceptualize things, and attitude is our predisposition towards the subject. We come across many people who are good at mathematics, but still they certain stereotypes held them back. So I think there is a combination of aptitude and attitude to excel in mathematics. And secondly, the Honorable Prime Minister of UK, Rishi Sunak, has recently appealed to put mathematics till the age of 16 years to make sure that the foundational skills, at the same time the numeracy skills of the workforce can get diversified, and at the same time they can be suited for the upcoming jobs in Industry 4.0, which are basically rested upon the numeracy skills, calculations, etc., something like the data computing or other factors.
Now, since your parents are from the banking industry, you must have been exposed to concepts like bad debts, NPAs. So, can you tell me what is the NPA, what is the bad debt? Is there any difference between these two?
Sir, an NPA is any asset for which a principal or the interest paid is due after 90 days. NPA comes under bad debt. After 90 days, as long as the duration prolongs and if the NPA is not serviced, it turns to a bad debt. Eventually, if it is so unsustainable on the balance sheet, it will lead to the write-off of the loan, sir.
You mean to say that principal or interest which is due after 90 days is considered to be NPA?
Yes, sir. Right from the 91st day, it turns out to be NPA, sir. For the first 90 days, it's called a special mention account. Special mention account 1, special mention account 2, and 3.
Oh, you know so many details. What is that special mention account 1? Special mention account 2?
For the first 30 days, it's called special mention account 1. Based on the creditworthiness tests that the banks do. The first 30 days is called SMA 1. For the next 30 days, it's called SMA 2. For the next 30 days,
Recover bad debt in that phase 3 or 4 or 5 or
after
which?
90 days, once it turns to be NPA, if it couldn't be serviceable, I think it turns out to be a bad debt, sir.
Finally, tell me. There is a controversy about, before I pass on to my colleague, the personality test is not over yet. The judge's appointment, what is the controversy? Why should it be there at all?
So I think the institutions of executive and judiciary have been at loggerheads on this process of judicial appointments, where the executive has been raising complaints on the approach or the practice of the collegium-based appointments for being too opaque. At the same time, for not involving the executive. So recently, many of the constitutional functionaries have raised saying that the court striking down the NJAC Act or the 99th Constitutional Amendment on the pretext of independence of judiciary makes sure that the appointments are not diversified. At the same time, there is this growing favoritism in the appointments. So executive is quite willing to have its role in the appointment process, sir.
So executive trying to have
or keen.
Very keen, sir.
Yeah, executive trying to be keen to get involved is one thing, and they're not being involved as if the constitution prescribes that they should be involved and judiciary is not involved. So which is correct?
So I think the constitution gives some role for executive to come and involve in the process of the appointment, sir. It says that there should be consultation. The president appoints judges based on the consulting Supreme Court, based on consulting Supreme Court judges.
So where is the considering the president of head of executive, judiciary, and legislature, and consult the judiciary? Where is the executive's involvement there?
So, but the implicit constitution implicitly rests on this accountability and involvement of like to make sure that there is no rigid separation of powers. Implicitly, there is this principle highlighted in the Constitution, such that once all the institutions are involved in appointment, it leads to an accountability, sir.
Yeah. Sai Pranav.
Mira,
I think
Vivek Dara?
That is chairman's
I think
Parle,
having started, yeah.
Having started.
Yeah.
No, Sai, I see a lot of literary bent of mine, involvement, reading. Now, can you tell me how Bhagavatula Shankara Shastri is well known?
I'm not aware of the personality, sir.
He is known as Arudra. Have you heard about him?
So if you, can I guess, sir, if you permit me? He's a
Lyricist,
sir.
Yeah. What is his contribution? Can you know? No. Now, from coming from AP, we generally get a feeling that the present government is heavily into welfare schemes, YSR scheme or Jagannath scheme and so on. Now it gives a feeling that the industrial development part of it seems to be neglected. So what do you think is the focus of the government on industry? Is industry developing? Is there a policy which is active and all that?
So there has been certain concerns on the expenditure management of the Andhra Pradesh government, so such as the revenue expenditure being more and the revenue deficit being high at the 55,000 crores, with capital expenditure lagging. But I do think that the AP government has been trying a lot to invest in human capital development through proper welfare schemes targeted towards the sectors of health and education. But capital expenditure, even as RBI report has highlighted, there needs to be developed proper capital expenditure to
Industry development. Is there any policy? Is there any industrial cluster? Any big industry has come there?
So in 2020, AP government has started its AP new industrial policy, under which there are 3 hubs that are being promoted. One is called the Sri City Hub, the Visakhapatnam Hub, and other thing I don't recollect, sir. But the industrial policy calls for proper plug and play models for MSMEs to also make sure that there's proper handholding support and facilitation through its digital platforms.
Now, again, recently the Chief Minister announced that Vizag will be the capital. Okay, but the earlier 3 capital proposal, what happens to that? And what is the status? What is the capital now? Is Vizag or Amaravati, which is the executive capital?
Currently, as recently Minister of Home Affairs has also highlighted, the current capital of Andhra Pradesh is Amaravati, sir. But I think that the issue of 3 capitals is currently sub judice, sir. It's pending under the Supreme Court. But as far as the official reports are concerned, I think Amaravati is the capital of the Andhra Pradesh, sir.
What is the role of the state in the capital formation?
So I think state government is it's sovereign and it's autonomous in deciding on its capital. Pending after once the decision is made, I think the Minister of Home Affairs it agrees to that, sir.
A recent annual status report of education has shown that during and after the pandemic, there is a fall in the abilities of mathematics among Western and Southern boys, especially. Now, have you read this report? No? What could be the reasons, and also, as continuing, how you can make mathematics more exciting and improve? Because if you look at India, we seem to be losing out the advantage of mathematics globally also.
So the reasons for the recent shortfall, I believe, is the learning shortfalls. The learning outcomes have been disturbed due to the COVID effect, with many people in government schools and people from lower backgrounds have been not given access to proper teaching during COVID. That had a devastating impact on the learning outcomes, especially in the mathematics. And to the second part of your question, sir, I believe mathematics can properly be imbibed in students through proper teaching, sir. I think a teacher needs to be engaging the students in mathematics, making it a practical experience. For example, I believe when I was till my 7th standard, 8th standard, I was not that good at mathematics, sir. But from 9th standard, my teacher was kind enough to invest specially on me, making sure that the practical application of mathematics has been tangible to me. She has made me show that she made me witness things in a practical way, putting special interest on me. So that way I think the teachers should be.
Training also is required.
Yes, sir.
There are a lot of shortage of teachers also in this country, you know.
I think even I believe that teacher training should be rather than more formal setup. I think we can engage a proper volunteer workforce we have, sir. For example, like the Tamil Nadu government, as it has been doing, it has been engaging many volunteers, the community volunteers, to make sure that they go and teach students in the streets. So I think that can be nothing.
సత్యనారాయణ గారు పర్లేదు.
Mr. Pranav, we are talking about Andhra Pradesh. What we observed is that there is a big mess as far as the financial management of the state is concerned. What is the view?
So I think the situation is a bit concerning, sir. I wouldn't say it bad. It is a bit concerning. Even the RBI report recently flagged certain concerns, such as this growing off-budget borrowings, which is amounting up to 9% of GSDP. And secondly, there has been growing revenue deficit up to 55,000 crores as against the budgeted estimates of 300 crores. And thirdly, there is this growing public debt of 32% of GSDP. I think these three things largely summarize the concerning situation of the economy. But the AP government is investing these things in human capital formation at the same.
The concept called the loans beyond the budget. What is this concept?
I'm not aware of it, sir.
Just now you talked about NPAs. Now most of the banks are giving loans. They have become victims because you see the banks are giving loans and they are unable to recover those things. Now, is it are they become culprits or victims of this fiscal policies of banks?
So I would say they have become, I think both, sir. I would say both, because culprit I would say because of poor governance systems. I think the top layer of governance in each and every public sector bank or private sector bank has been opaque. With this hierarchy oriented governance, certain NPS have been, certain bad loans have been given to industries. So, but given to the victim, I would say poor credit information targeting or lack of proper credit worthiness tests. At the same time, the growing destabilizing factors in economy, such as COVID-19 or the reducing demand in the economy. I think these things are also been targeting. This have also been having impact, a bad impact on the banks.
State Bank of India is the news. For what reasons is the news?
So recently, for its large exposure towards a firm that has been accused of overinflating its stock prices.
So this is the influence of maybe government agencies on this bank, or as it has given on its own?
So I would say, I think the negotiations with the company that is concerned, I think that would be might be the prospects of the company would be promising, given its steps in the new age sector, such as green hydrogen or infrastructure. I think these things have made it promising to lend. At the same time, I also believe that there has been certain favoritism or certain interference in this lending process.
You got this best interpersonal relations. Now tell us on a scale of 1 to 10, what is the level of the interpersonal relations or the type of relationship among the people in India? So do you think that you can give 10 out of 1 to 10, or you find in between? Where do you put this?
I would say 6, sir. I would say 6. Something better than 50%, because I think India is a multicultural country. There have been certain horizontal, vertical lines intersecting based on our community, our caste or religion. Sometimes it is leading to dilution of our social capital. But I also believe that there is this national integrity underlying despite of all our differences, such as during cricket or during something like during any external emergencies, our army fighting, we supporting our army or we supporting our nation in cricket. So I think this makes us forget our our backgrounds and fight for our nation. Even during COVID-19, how the nation has together stood for the government's lockdown. I think these things, there is this imminent social capital that's in us, but certain destabilizing factors has led to dilution of it.
Oh, is it because of the factors of India, what you mentioned, the caste again? Is it the only reason, or is it anything relating to the human nature? Because the relations are very low.
So I would say the interference of politics with certain social factors is the harmful factor that I would believe, sir. When these differences have been taken as an advantage, that indeed leads to this dilution of interpersonal behavior, sir.
Okay, apart from these local factors, now do you find any human nature is also not contributing for this type of healthy or intimate relationships?
Yes, sir, I would believe because after 1990, after the globalization, we are living in a neoliberal era, sir. So it is being driven by our materialism, by our greed, our greed for consuming without any respect for the nature or the respect for the communities.
Studies conducted for this effect for human relations, why they are very low? From psychology point of view or from the other point of view?
From my psychology point of view, I would believe it's the materialism that is driving us. It is making us forget our roots, the community linkages that we can share as persons. I think that is the main reason, sir.
Do you know any particular study conducted on this human relations? Coming to this essay, you said, what is this narrative essay?
So it's basically an account of some events or experiences that I would convey in a dramatic style or in a narrative style. Any events, any book that I have read or any place to which I have travelled, which I would like to narrate in a more engaging way, sir.
So there is also essay in the UPSC. I think you wrote 2 essays. Yeah. Now earlier essay was there up to 1979, but this was removed and it was reintroduced from 93. Now what exactly is the reason why it was reintroduced by the UPSC?
I think SS only pronounces our creative abilities, sir. The way we can interconnect many things and many things across around us and bring it on paper. It highlights our versatility and our ability to conceptualize ideas and put it in a free-flowing way.
Why it was introduced by the UPSC?
I think to estimate the versatility and the diversity and the way the people, the way the aspirants conceptualize things. Future, for example, bureaucrats, the aspirants now will be bureaucrats later. They're gonna draft policies. They're going to be communicating. They're going to be the communicators of the government's policies. So I think essay, it improves our communication skills. That might be one of the main reasons, sir.
You come from a family of bankers, both father and mother. Yeah, slightly again talking about banking, we keep hearing about something called bad bank, isn't it? So is it a good bank or really a bad bank?
So bad bank is a good bank, sir. I think the basic thing that it does is to buy bad assets from the bank to make sure that it cleans off the balance sheets of the bank. At the same time, it invests in maximum output, maximum asset realization to make sure that the capital in the economy is not lost.
Is it very unique to India or is it a global phenomenon?
There have been bad banks in USA, in Sweden, in China, sir.
But there is also a downside to this concept. Are you aware of that? What is the downside to it?
Sir, some people highlight that there will be a moral crisis where banks, with the support of bad banks, will keep on lending its loans with promise that a bad bank will come to its rescue. There is an imminent moral crisis. At the same time, even the former RBI governor Raghuram Rajan says it has no significant impact on the economy. It's just transferring asset from an institution to other institution, and also adds huge expenditure on the government, fiscal expenditure to bail out these assets on the bad banks, sir.
I see. Will it also impact the efficiency of the banks in general?
No, sir. I believe I strongly believe that indeed improves the efficiency of bank. It makes them bit alert in lending. At the same time, even banks can come out with in-house bad banks. So this will make sure that their balance sheets are harmonized. At the same time, they have this confidence in proper restructuring of assets.
There's also talk about corporates being allowed to start their own banks. Is it a welcome idea?
I would say so, because I think in the top 200 global banks, only SBI is listed in the top 200 bank. I'm coming to it, sir. So I think we need to have a large-sized bank, sir. Industries having lots and lots of funds. I think they can come and set up large banks, global banks. That in turn leads to proper virtuous cycle in lending, at the same time investments. But I would say
Themselves.
lending to the industry, sir.
Was corporate, that means, for example, Mr. Mukesh Ambani of Reliance Industries, who is very rich, he starts a bank and he starts giving loans to his own companies or entities.
Lending to oneself. From right
The
hand to left
depositors
hand.
will be people like you and me. Ultimately, any bank will get deposits from public. So that's the question.
Indeed, there is a conflict of interest, sir. But I think it can also help out many small-scale industries. As at the same time, even industries being in the banking sector can diversify stakeholders in the banking economy.
There's also talk about, in India, one can go anywhere, work anywhere and all that. But for some strange reason, in India, we equate democracy with only elections. The moment we conduct elections, we think India is a vibrant democracy, where we successfully conduct elections. But at the same time, people go all over the country in search of jobs and all that. So there's also talk about remote voting, right? Do you see any challenges in that, or is it a workable idea?
There are indeed some challenges. For example, we don't have a proper migrant database. For migrants to enroll in the voter list, there's proper migrant database. There's also lack of knowledge on the quantum of voting machines that we need to deploy, or the voting workforce we need to deploy. And thirdly, the enrollment of these migrant voters is a challenge, sir. And I would also say there have been certain concerns about enforcing model code. When the host state is going to elections, how would they make sure that the migrants follow that model code of conduct, or the politicians follow that MCC in that regions? There have been certain challenges, but it is a workable idea, sir. I think with growing digitization of our process, such as recently some nations have come to blockchain voting, which promotes transparency and lack of it cannot be tampered, sir. So I think it can be a workable idea, but with proper involvement of all stakeholders, sir.
You seem to sound that it's purely an administrative challenge. There is no legislative necessity to make it, legitimize this whole process.
Yes, sir. I think securing a consensus with all the parties is one challenge, sir. Secondly, I think it requires a constitutional amendment, because representation of parliament or state legislatures, they come up with to amend any laws any concerned with it, there needs to be a constitutional amendment, I believe, sir. So
a lot of emphasis on green energy these days, be it in the budget or elsewhere. Globally also there are lots of concerns about green energy. What are the challenges India is facing on this front?
So I would say firstly the storage challenges, sir. I think we as a tropical nation have a huge impact, a huge potential to fetch renewable energy, but we don't have proper storage systems in place, such something like battery storages or pumped hydrogen energy storage systems. I think one is the storage system, sir. Secondly, I would pumped hydro energy, something like that, sir. Yes, sir, hydropower. So, and also I would also believe that we don't have proper renewable energy forecasting system, sir. We have been losing much quantum of renewable energy, lack of renewable energy forecasting and improper grid integration. And thirdly, I would say there's certain dependency in generating renewable energy, such as PV panels. We are dependent on many other nations like China. For wind panes, we need to depend on other nations. Even our ocean energy, we are it comes with high costs, sir. We have been successful enough in downscaling the costs, but I think these three are biggest challenges.
You know, the COP resolutions and all that, there's a feeling that, you know, developing countries are at a disadvantage in terms of, you know, developed countries dictating terms to the developing countries and asking them to reduce carbon emissions and stuff, which might necessarily impact, you know, development. So is it a fact that the developing countries, insofar as these global norms of, you know, emissions are concerned, are at a disadvantage?
Yes, sir. I would agree to that, sir, because I think many developed nations have properly they have been on the ascending curve, and they have fetched the benefits using the carbon emissions. Now they are in the position to they are in position to develop proper infrastructure, proper carbon capture and utilization storage systems. So they are at a position of advantage. But many developing nations have just started the transition. So this process is a bit carbon intensive. We need to pull people out of poverty, which is energy intensive. So in this process, as we have seen, the West has been dictating some terms. At the same time, it has been backing in its climate financing or the technology sharing. I think we are at that disadvantage, sir. But now with our certain policies such as Nation Action Plan on Climate Change or Green Hydrogen Mission, we are making sure that we become self-reliant in these technologies. At the same time, build proper alliances such as the One Sun, One World, One Grid initiative or National Solar Alliance, something like this.
Exposed to, or rather, you know, have some experience of holding some position in the literary team.
Who is in the literary?
Yeah, some literary team. And I was just wondering why, you know, is there a racial bias in terms of, you know, Indians or Asians in general being selected for the prestigious, you know, prizes like Booker's Prize and all that? We don't hear many names except some Arundhati Roy and recently some Geetanjali or something. They are far and few in between, you know.
So first thing I would feel that I think the publicity that we need to give to our books, I think the culture of book fairs or literary fairs, I think that has been lacking. Now it has been improving, sir. For the past till the recent times, it has been less. So I think we need to improve that publicity in the domestic era, sir, in the domestic field, sir. Only then we can scale that to the international level to get be lauded by many international organizations to get those prizes. I think we as a nation I think we have abandoned our habit of book reading to a larger extent in this digital era. I think we need to make sure that we read, we propagate this idea, we acclaim our books. Then I think it will scale up to the global level, sir.
Isn't it? Anyway, thank you.
Good. So with this, we come to the end of this mock interview. We'll give you a feedback. When actually is your interview?
April 12th, sir.
Almost 2 months, plenty of time. Do you intend shaving and then appearing?
Yes, sir.
You said, no?
April 12th.
Okay. So it will be a little warm. Delhi gets warm by April. What kind of clothes do you intend wearing?
Me, sir. This is fine, sir. I've been to Delhi last year also as well during the month of June. Yes, sir. June 1st. Yes, sir.
Okay. Now the feedback is only to help you build on your somewhat weak areas. Most of the questions will originate from your detailed application form, and then depending on the answer that you give, the next question will be asked. So it would help you if you can read a little about this lithium-ion batteries. Of course, you're an electrical engineer, so we expect you to know a little more than the commoner. That's why I deliberately asked you, is it the anode or the cathode? In a lithium-ion battery, it is neither. The cathode would be a graphite rod, which means carbon. The anode will be some metallic oxide. The medium, like in a car battery of sulfuric acid, is the medium, electrolyte. So that is the lithium. So the ions keep reversing. So it has all the positive qualities that you mentioned. However, lithium as an element is not available in all countries. So we are heavily dependent on a few countries where lithium is. Bolivia, maybe China also, maybe I understand Balochistan also is likely to have. I don't know. Somebody said even Jammu and Kashmir. So be in touch with that subject. Of course, regarding other things, each panel member will give the feedback.
Yeah. Yeah. So Pranav, I must say that your articulation is good. You have good flow. Your vocabulary is good. Maybe you can pause sometimes little bit. The speed at which you are answering, the velocity. Sometimes in your anxiety to vomit out whatever is there, vomit in a positive sense, throwing up whatever answers that you have in mind, you may commit mistakes like you said, pumped hydrogen instead of pumped hydroelectricity. So a little bit pause. Otherwise that you are packing your answers with a lot of content in the first go itself. Sometimes of course you are digressing when you are not clear about the question perhaps. Like alternative sources of energy, green energy, you reeled out all the possible sources of green energy. That's very good. But things like hydrogen and all. So if you pause, you will be able to answer well. That is one. Then you must focus on your reply. If you don't know, you must say like once or twice you said you don't know. But when I asked about the objectives, conflict of objectives, you started explaining about the training that the students are given, which is not required. Just focus whether there is a conflict or not. If they are charging high fee, whether that fee is being spent on your facilities in quality of education improvement or for something else, robbing Peter to pay Paul or whatever. So you should be able to directly focus on the answer. Though ultimately you defended your answer when I asked about 7-star accommodation, you said no. Yeah, their ashrams are also down to earth and not very expensive, even Mahindra Hills. I just wanted to put some pressure on you to see whether you stand by your answer or not. So that's okay. So then don't get into highly technical details just because you have heard of one or two, like the way NPAs are treated by the banks. They used to be called accounts marked for adjustment, sticky accounts, making a provision for bad and doubtful debts, and actually writing off. These are all the various stages in the banks. So you started talking about technical details. If you were a banker before, it's okay. But just because your father and mother are bankers, you need not get into those technical details. If you are good at it, it's okay, because you will be drilled. If one of the panel members is a CMD of a bank before, you will be grilled. So don't get into too much of technical details. Okay. Now NPA, you have to use the keywords like you have always used mostly. Overdue. There is a concept called overdue. What is that?
After a specific
Due on a particular date but not paid on the date becomes overdue. So any interest or principal overdue after 90 days is a NPA. Now that will be marked for adjustment. All NPAs are not bad debts, because it becomes a bad debt only when it is actually written off. If it is a doubtful debt, they'll make some provision. Now NPA, the bank can always recover. Then it comes back to the bank's recovery, and consequently the income earned on that recovery becomes income of the bank. So that is the cycle. Okay. So NPAs are not bad debts, firstly. They may become bad debts ultimately after the NCLT is approached or liquidation process starts, etc. etc. Otherwise you are good. Once your English is also good. I think you are a convent educated, your flow is good. Sometimes you are making mistakes like despite of. Is it correct grammatically? Despite of.
It is either in spite of,
or despite.
Or despite.
Or despite. You see your interview, the personality test, small little mistakes so that the impression is not lost, about you. Otherwise you are quite good, you are a potential candidate. All the best.
Sometimes there is also tense problem I found.
Sometimes, yes, yeah.
Now and then I found
Yeah.
some tense problem, past tense, present tense,
Yeah.
except.
I think that is speed.
The speed created, driven.
No, I think we're quite articulate, but
Reduce, I think.
So you said clearly that you are quick and fast, but I think you have to pause and organize your responses and answer. Then you will do well, because I think your content is good. So, as far as IAS, state matters, I think your response should be more organized. I was asking you about industry, and you're generally, building a background of welfare, expenditure, all that. So more focused on industrial policy, clusters, whether industries are coming, any investment has come, and all that. You can be more focused. Second thing, I asked about Arudra. You were, saying lyricist.
He is much more.
Unfortunately, yeah. Unfortunately, he is very reduced in his importance. But coming from AP, you should know that he has, created the Telugu literary encyclopedia. Okay. Now that is a phenomenal work which
12 volumes.
12 volumes of
It's okay.
Telugu.
No, but no other person has written such a big quantity of the entire history of Telugu literature.
From 2500 years Nunchi he has written.
Yeah.
It's called Samagra Andhra Sahitya Charitra. It's a phenomenal work. I think very, very underappreciated.
Nobody else did it.
Yeah.
Nobody else.
Since your DAF mentioned about something about literature, he asked that question. Otherwise, you
from Andhra.
Literally, sir, I was like in essay writing or execution part of that.
No, you said poems in Telugu.
More informal nature, sir. They are not well versed with literature. Just for the sake of satisfying my creativity, I do that, sir.
No, you can continue. And
Yeah.
Arudra did both. He wrote cinema songs also. But there is another facet to his personality.
I think otherwise, lithium and all, it is big news actually.
Yeah.
Very recently. And India becomes 6th largest in terms of deposits. They have announced. I don't know how far it is true, but it's a big thing if it happens. When it will be a revolution in our entire
supply chains.
All the best.
Mr. Pranav, what we observed is that your behavior, you are just putting a glance on the other members also. But when glancing, you can put a smile on your face. So throughout the interview, what we observed is with a serious, you appear to be very tense. So that feeling, when you can take a type of a relaxed position. Sir has also pointed out while expressing you are so fast. You can measure your words and you can relax yourself. That gives an indication that you can converse very nicely. Then you are confident while answering our questions, but sometimes it gets into some overconfidence also. So there we must take care of those things. Then expressions are already given. So slow down. So you are giving keywords, key phrases. That's a very nice expression. But at the same time, you can take time, leisurely. Then throughout the interview, what I observed is that you put your hands on your ankles, but put your hands on your thighs so that.
No, wait a minute. Are there arm rests? Let your elbows rest on that. Come, bring them in.
Yeah, that's nice. That gives hand gestures.
When you see, you will see the difference, how you appear. This is, I'm about to get up.
Sir, when will you close? I'll get up.
Body language.
Body language.
Then, of course, you got good listening skills, what we talked about. And the conceptual clarity, some of the concepts when we ask, just you think about that. Instead, I don't know like that, but you can have a thought about those things. If you are not clear, then you can say absolutely. Then, when we talk about the certain questions which I asked a few, When we talk about the fiscal management and the fiscal management of AP, you gave that, of course, it's a concern. That's a nice word you have used. When we talk about this loans beyond budget, you say from corporations they have taken a lot of loans which are not being reflected. They are not reflecting the budget itself. Thereby, this is not the proper way of fiscal management in AP.
Instead of budget borrowing,
Yes, they're getting from the corporations together. You heard about these things. Then about the human relations. Of course, human relations definitely depends on many factors, but the human nature is that that people tend to play games. You see, the play. It's a game playing mindset is there with all. That's the human nature. So on that there is a lot of study by the psychologists, especially Eric Berne. He studied on why people.
Eric Berne, E-R-I-C, Eric B-E-R-N-E.
Eric Berne is a great psychologist and talks about the transactional analysis, where he talks about games people play.
deception, dominance, something like that.
No. Actually, we play games. In the sense, game playing means, for example, you might have heard about in Mahabharata, how Drona played a game on Ekalavya and how Krishna played a game on Dronacharya. So that's called the games means what? They want to put the other person in a snare and they want to make this person, now I got you. So that type of thing. So when people start playing games, what happens is the intimacy of the people will not be there. Then the interpersonal relationship
becomes more transactional nature.
Yes. Now, when we talk about the people, whether the people are just going over transactional aspects or intimacy is also there. So this intimacy is absent in most of the things, and some of the factors for lack of intimacy, you have mentioned those things. So it's a very important thing because you mentioned about best interpersonal relations, etc. So from that perspective, I asked this question. Coming to this essay about the narrative essays, essay was reintroduced from 1993. So that was again there was reintroduced. It was reintroduced on the recommendations of Satish Chandra Committee, and the Satish Chandra Committee has specifically mentioned why essay is to be reintroduced. So from that perspective, I asked this. These are the few aspects you can brush. But we observe that you are a good material and hope that you are going to get the services.
Yeah, while I broadly agree with what others have said, I would only add to the inputs that you have already received. You have a tendency to grab the question from the mouth of the member. Please cut that tendency.
Wait for the question to be concluded.
At least pretend that you are reflecting on the question. Though you might know the answer, right? No, you are no longer a school child and you are not replying to a DU or the headmaster.
And it's not a quiz competition.
Okay, fastest finger first. No. Right? So it's a purposeful, very, informed kind of discussion we are having, right? So that is the kind of approach you should have, number one. Number two, on this question of corporate banking also, you did the same mistake. That, a corporate bank, I read somewhere, therefore I have to answer. Please listen to the question. What is the core of the question? But then you started saying everything, then sir, when he interrupted, I am coming to that, sir. No, that's not the point. Why he had to interrupt? Because, you still have that mains answer writing habit at the back of your mind. I think you have to overcome that. So you are not writing an answer now. We are just having a conversation with a certain purpose, right? So therefore it is important that you understand the question. What is at the core of the question, right? There is also a certain tendency on your part, which I noticed, that you somehow tend to support whatever government is doing. Only when you are probed as to the downside of it, only then you are coming back to it. But you are, since you are only a candidate and not a member of the service, as yet. What is expected of you is to take into account both sides of the picture.
Like in this Adani's case, State Bank of India, reluctantly you said there must have been some pressure. Public sector banks are largely victims of the political crony capitalist pressure.
So please
You
avoid
name
that.
the company also.
Please avoid that.
Sir, I have a doubt, sir. Can I name these companies? Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
So therefore, probably people outside, is it the first time you are going?
I've been to Indian Forest Service Center.
Okay. But people outside also say, no, when you are appearing for government service and all that, you must always support government. All kinds of talk is there outside, isn't it? I'm sure you must have heard about this. So never criticize government and all. You may not criticize government after entering the service, not before. You are a
No,
citizen
you
of
won't be
India.
criticizing. You said there are two views.
Being critical. You have to critique any policy, right? You are critiquing the policy, not necessarily being critical for the sake of, being seen as a very high intellectual and all that, isn't it? So what is expected of a candidate is, to be aware of the merits and demerits of any issue. And please remember, no public policy is free from any demerit. There is always a downside to any public policy, howsoever good it may be, right? So therefore, keep this in mind, and then you come to terms with the question in a very composite and a comprehensive manner. Not necessarily leaning towards the government or not necessarily being critical and so on. Okay, but otherwise, content is good, but the rate of flow at which you may little slow down by one, notch. Okay, but otherwise, fine.
Is there anything you want to ask us?
Sir, like, am I permitted to name the companies or name the functionary names?
I also didn't name. None of us named. See, the mention about the public sector banks, especially State Bank of India, etc., being compelled to lend, whether the various criteria prescribed by its own standards are met or not. Sometimes they have to hoodwink because the board takes a decision based on the indications that the finance minister or somebody suggests that I think you should give this loan, it is coming up, sanction it, that kind of a thing. It happens because every member of that board is appointed by the Ministry of Finance. They owe that post to that finance minister. So that applies even to Reserve Bank of India. That happens.
In what way should I, like, for
No, there are two views. You simply say, sir, I'm told that small loans, etc., are on merits. If there is a need for that loan and if there is a repaying capacity and if the entire project is feasible and economically viable, they grant. But in some big cases where the borrower is a very influential person, they simply ignore all these things and they give.
like using these words like compelling or
It is believed. It's not you who is saying.
so I should add it is believed that something.
There is a not it is believed. Some people allege. In fact, even in Adani's case, there are a large number of people who say he has become big in the last 6 or 7 years because of the crony capitalism support of the Prime Minister. And they are saying the Prime Minister always travels by his aircraft, and whenever Prime Minister goes abroad, he is in the team or he goes in advance. And the Australian mine and many other things. These are allegations.
Allegations there are.
If you have to go to a different level, you should also say that look here, all this criticism comes. Otherwise, the bank boards or bank management, they look at certain performance indicators. For instance, if they have to sanction working capital, they look at the financial statements and see what are their current assets, what are their current liabilities, what is the working capital requirement, what is the margin that the proponent is going to bring in, whether there is a adequate primary security, whether there is collateral security or not, whether guarantees or not. they follow all this. The due diligence exercise is carried out. Only when the loan becomes a question mark, when it becomes a NPA, all kinds of criticisms come. Otherwise, the bank management is also responsible to get that spread. The profits come through lending. If they are over conservative and over cautious, they will not be able to lend to anybody.
They won't get any.
They won't get any interest. No, at the same time, it is not to be said that all businesses are going to be successful financially. There can be business failures. So just because there is a business failure of UB, United Breweries or whatever, whether it is willful default or non-willful default. See, if you keep these concepts at the back of your mind, then any question can be handled very easily from both the sides. That's the point. Okay.
Anything else? Okay then. All the best.
So thank you, sir. Thank you.